Depression. Depression is not sadness. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Sadness has a cause, a loss, a disappointment, something that went wrong. Depression exists without needing a reason. Your life can look completely fine from the outside, and depression can still be present, heavy, and constant, underneath all of it.
What is actually happening is that the brain's systems for producing and regulating chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, the messengers responsible for pleasure, motivation, and emotional connection, stop working properly. The result is not just low mood. It is more like color draining out of everything. Food loses taste. Activities that once brought genuine enjoyment now feel hollow. Sleep either disappears or becomes the only thing you want to do, and neither fixes how you feel. Simple decisions feel enormous. Getting out of bed can take more effort than anything else you do all day. The cruelest part of depression is what it does to your thinking. It tells you that this is permanent, that things will not improve, that the numbness is not a symptom, it is just who you are now. And because it is your own brain saying it, it is very difficult not to believe it. Depression does not announce itself loudly. It quietly convinces you that feeling alive was something that happened to other people.
Generalized anxiety disorder. Everyone worries. Anxiety disorder is what happens when the worry mechanism breaks and cannot be switched off. Your brain's threat detection system, the part designed to keep you safe from genuine danger, starts misfiring. It begins treating ordinary situations as emergencies. An email you haven't read yet, a conversation from 3 days ago, something that hasn't happened and probably never will. All of it gets flagged as urgent, alarming, requiring your immediate attention.
The body responds physically. Muscles stay permanently tense, stomach cramps, heart rate elevates for no apparent reason. Sleep is difficult because the brain refuses to stand down for the night. You feel exhausted because your nervous system is running a constant emergency response to threats that do not exist. People say calm down or stop overthinking, as though those are things a person with anxiety disorder can simply choose to do. It is like telling someone with a broken thermostat to just set the right temperature. The regulation system itself is what is not working. Over time, people with untreated anxiety often start avoiding situations that trigger it, which makes the world feel smaller with every avoidance, and the anxiety stronger. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is widely misunderstood as simply being unable to focus. The reality is more specific and more complicated. The part of the brain that manages planning, impulse control, and self-regulation, the prefrontal cortex, develops differently or operates differently in people with ADHD. The result is not that focus is impossible, it is that focus cannot be directed at will. People with ADHD can hyper-focus intensely on things that genuinely interest them for hours without noticing time passing. The problem is that this cannot be chosen. When something is boring, tedious, or repetitive, the brain simply does not produce enough dopamine to make continuing feel possible, even when the person genuinely wants to complete the task. Forgotten appointments, half-finished projects, conversations that drift, keys that disappear. These are not signs of laziness or not caring. They are what happens when the brain's follow-through system does not fire consistently. The exhausting part for many people with ADHD is knowing exactly what needs to be done and watching themselves fail to do it anyway. The gap between intention and action is real. Willpower alone does not close it.
OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, traps the brain in a loop it cannot exit. An unwanted thought arrives, a fear, a terrible what if, an image that disturbs you. A brain without OCD processes it and moves on. A brain with OCD gets snagged on it. The thought will not leave, and the anxiety it creates keeps escalating until you do something to reduce it.
That something is the compulsion, checking, counting, washing, arranging, repeating a phrase internally. Whatever the specific ritual is, it temporarily reduces the anxiety, And then the thought returns, often stronger, and the process repeats. People casually describe themselves as a bit OCD when they like things tidy. Real OCD is not being tidy. It is spending hours on rituals you know make no logical sense, but cannot stop performing. It is your hands cracking from repeated washing. It is checking the same lock 15 times and still not feeling certain. It is the disorder telling you that your thoughts have power, that thinking something bad makes it more likely to happen unless you complete the right action. OCD does not make you careful. It makes you a prisoner to thoughts you never asked for.
PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder happens when the brain's system for processing dangerous experiences breaks down after something genuinely terrifying occurs. Under normal circumstances, when something frightening ends, the nervous system gradually settles and files the memory away. With PTSD, that settling does not happen. The brain keeps treating the traumatic event as though it is still ongoing, still happening right now, requiring an active survival response.
Flashbacks are not memories in the ordinary sense. They are full re-experiences, sensory, physical, immediate. A smell, a sound, or a random visual detail can transport someone back completely. Heart pounding, breathing difficult, body responding as though the danger is present. Nightmares interrupt sleep. Hypervigilance, a constant scanning of the environment for threats, makes it impossible to fully relax, even in genuinely safe places. Loud, unexpected sounds trigger sharp physical reactions. Concentration becomes very difficult because the brain's available resources are being used to watch for danger. PTSD is not weakness or inability to move on. It is the brain's protection system, operating in a context it was never designed for, stuck responding to a threat that has ended.
Bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder involves the brain cycling between two extreme emotional states, neither of which is the person's choice. During a manic episode, energy becomes excessive and seemingly limitless. Sleep needs drop dramatically. Thoughts arrive faster than they can be processed. Confidence surges. Risk feels irrelevant. Decisions that would normally warrant caution, spending, impulsive commitments, dramatic life changes, feel obviously correct. The world seems clearer, brighter, more connected. Sometimes the energy tips into irritability, paranoia, or a loss of contact with reality. Then it collapses. The depressive phase arrives, and everything inverts. The energy that was overwhelming is completely gone. The confidence has vanished. Getting out of bed requires significant effort. And the contrast, knowing what having energy felt like, makes the low feel even heavier. Bipolar disorder is not having mood swings or being unpredictable in the ordinary sense. It is your brain chemistry moving between extremes on its own schedule without asking. Relationships are strained by the shifts. Decisions made during mania create consequences that need to be managed during depression. The person is simply trying to hold their life together through a cycle they did not choose and cannot stop.
Panic disorder. A panic attack feels like dying. That is not an exaggeration. The brain's fear center, the amygdala, misfires and triggers a full physical survival response with no actual threat present. Heart rate spikes dramatically. Chest tightens. Breathing becomes labored. Extremities go numb. Dizziness sets in. Every physical sensation feeds the fear. The fear intensifies the physical response. The physical response amplifies the fear. The loop escalates until the attack peaks, usually within 10 minutes, and then gradually subsides, leaving exhaustion and disorientation behind.
The real problem with panic disorder is not the attacks themselves. It is what happens after the first one. The fear of having another attack becomes its own source of anxiety. Places where attacks have occurred get avoided. Situations where escape would be difficult get eliminated. The world gets gradually smaller as the person removes more and more of what might trigger the next one. Some people stop leaving their homes entirely. Panic disorder does not just take away moments, it takes away the basic sense of safety in your own body. The feeling that your own nervous system will not turn against you without warning. Social anxiety disorder is not shyness. The distinction matters. Shyness involves nervousness in social situations that can be pushed through. Social anxiety disorder involves a fear response, a genuine alarm signal that hijacks the entire system. Walking into a room, making a phone call, speaking up in a meeting. These situations feel like standing in front of a panel of judges waiting for you to fail. The thoughts that accompany it are specific and relentless. What if you say something wrong? What if your voice shakes? What if your face turns red? What if they think you are boring or strange or difficult? The mind is so occupied with monitoring itself for signs of failure that it cannot properly engage with the actual situation, which leads to stumbling over words, going blank, losing the thread of what was being said. After the interaction ends, the brain does not move on. It replays everything, finding and magnifying every imperfect moment. Social anxiety does not make you antisocial. It makes you terrified of being seen. And isolation begins to look like the only safe option. Eating disorders. Eating disorders are not about food. Understanding that is essential to understanding what they actually are. Anorexia nervosa involves severely restricting food intake, driven by an intense fear of weight gain and a distorted perception of one's own body. Eating feels like failure. The ability to restrict feels like control and success. In an environment where everything else feels chaotic and unmanageable, controlling food can feel like the one thing that is still possible. Bulimia nervosa involves cycles of eating large amounts of food and then compensating through purging behaviors. Each cycle brings intense shame, followed by the compulsion to repeat it, not because the person wants to, but because the disorder has established a pattern that temporarily provides something the brain needs. Both conditions cause serious physical damage that accumulates over time. But the barrier to recovery is rarely just physical. It is that the disorder speaks in the person's own voice, disguising itself as logic. It tells them that eating is weakness, that letting go of the behaviors means losing control, that recovery means losing the only thing protecting them. The protection is what is causing the harm. Understanding that does not make it easy to let go. It just explains why it is so difficult. Borderline personality disorder involves an emotional regulation system that works very differently from most people's. Where others experience feelings as waves that arrive and pass, someone with BPD experiences them at a much greater intensity and with much less natural buffer. Something small, an unanswered message, a plan that gets changed, can trigger emotional pain that feels genuinely unbearable. The brain is not being dramatic. It is registering the experience as more severe than it would register for most people. Relationships become enormously difficult. The fear of abandonment is intense and consistent, leading to patterns of clinging and then pushing people away that can feel confusing or hurtful to the people involved. Black and white thinking makes it hard to hold nuance. A person is trusted completely until something happens, and then they are not trusted at all. A stable sense of identity is difficult to maintain. Who you are can shift depending on who you are with, what is happening, what the emotional state is in the moment. People with BPD are frequently described as difficult or dramatic by those who do not understand what is happening internally. What is actually happening is that they are living in a near constant state of emotional emergency and trying to function normally in a world that does not accommodate that. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a disorder in which the brain's ability to process and distinguish reality is significantly impaired. It produces what are called positive symptoms, things added to experience that should not be there. Hallucinations most commonly involve hearing voices that are not external. These might comment on what you are doing, say deeply distressing things, or issue commands. Delusions are fixed false beliefs that feel completely real and are resistant to evidence. The conviction that you are being monitored, that others are conspiring against you, that you have a special significance or power. These are not imagination or metaphor. The brain is genuinely perceiving them as real. That is what makes schizophrenia so disorienting.
You cannot trust your own perception of what is happening around you.
It also produces negative symptoms, things that are subtracted from normal experience. Emotional expression flattens, motivation disappears, speech becomes disorganized. The effort required for basic daily functioning becomes very high. The way schizophrenia is depicted in popular culture, violent, erratic, dangerous, bears very little resemblance to the reality. Most people living with it are more likely to be victims of harm than causes of it. It is a serious and often isolating medical condition, manageable with proper treatment, and far better understood than the cultural conversation around it suggests.
Dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative identity disorder develops as a survival response to severe, repeated trauma during childhood. When a child experiences something their mind cannot process, abuse that is overwhelming and ongoing, the brain protects itself by separating. It creates compartments. Different parts of the self hold different memories, emotions, or roles, particularly the ones that would be too painful for the central consciousness to carry while still functioning day to day. These separate identity states are called alters. They are not different people. They are parts of one person's fractured experience, each holding something specific: anger, fear, the childlike state from before the trauma, practical skills developed later in life. Switching between them can happen without the person's awareness or control. Time gets lost. Conversations are reported that you have no memory of having. Preferences and skills can shift in ways that feel bewildering from the outside, and often even more so from the inside. What popular culture depicts as supernatural or sinister is in reality the outcome of severe childhood suffering. Recovery is possible. It requires significant therapy over time. The goal is not to eliminate the parts, but to help them coexist, to move from fragmentation towards something that feels increasingly like a unified self.